Okay, here's a hot take for you. I have to say that I think one of the most overlooked and underappreciated attributes of God is the very fact that he is with us, right? When he was prophesied before Jesus ever came into the world, he was prophesied as Emmanuel. That literally means God with us. I think it's one of the most overlooked things that we don't appreciate enough. And I want to talk about a specific place in scripture where God asked somebody to embark on a journey of obedience that was a little bit scary, potentially even a little bit dangerous, out of his comfort zone, but God's promise was to be with him. Exodus chapter 3 is when God speaks to Moses through the burning bush, and he calls him to do something that Moses thinks is unthinkable. He calls him to go back to Egypt, the land that he just was in, the land that he was raised in, and he calls Moses to go set the Israelites free from captivity, go to Pharaoh, tell him to let God's people go, and God was calling him to eventually lead the Israelites out of captivity and into freedom, the freedom that God had promised them. This is a lofty task, right? If you and I were asked by God to do something like this, we would be very hesitant, right? You think of all the heroes of the faith that God asked to do something spectacular. When God asked Abraham to go from his family and the place that he knew to a brand new place, we would be hesitant to do that. When God asked Noah to build this ark to save the people, to save his family from the flood, we would be hesitant to do that. If we were Moses and God asked us through a burning bush to go set these people free, we would have a lot of questions about what comes next. Moses had a lot of questions about what comes next. Moses says in verse 11 of chapter 3, "Who am I that I should go to Pharaoh and bring the Israelites out of Egypt?" He asks this question, who am I? And this is a question that you and we ask all the time. God asks us to walk into a new season. God asks us to walk into a season of marriage, of parenting, a new season professionally, maybe a new calling, maybe a location change. And our question when God lays something hard in front of us is always the same. Who am I? God, why me? God, I'm not strong enough. God, I'm not sure enough. I'm not confident enough in myself. God, I don't have the right skill sets. I don't have the right talents. God, who am I? But God's response to Moses is not what you would expect. His response to Moses is, no, I promise you can do it, or no, you'll be okay, or no, don't worry, you've been trained for this. God's response to Moses in verse 12 is very simply this. And God said, I will be with you. And this will be the sign to you that it is I who have sent you. When you have brought the people out of Egypt, you will worship God on this very mountain. I want to encourage you today that whatever the thing is that God has set before you, that he's asking for you to walk into, but all you fear is fear and panic. All you're doing is asking the question, God, who am I? Are you sure? I want to leave you with that promise. God might be calling you into something that seems scary or unfamiliar, but the promise is always the same. He promises to go with you. There's no wilderness, there's no shadow, there's no new territory or foreign land that God will call you into that he doesn't also go with you and lead you through. That's true for you today. It was true for Moses all the way back then, and it's true for you forever.